The doorknob and the door felt like it was being held shut. I couldn't open it, no matter how hard I tried, and I kept trying over and over again. Panic was setting in, and I started screaming to let me out. Thought my boyfriend was playing a mean prank on me, which wasn't like him. And I believed that until I heard his footsteps frantically storming down the stairs. He was telling me to let go of the door knob, which I did. He told me tossed him back, so I stood in the middle of the room as he kicked and kicked at the door, but it just wasn't budging. I was crying now, and he could hear that. It was not a normal quiet sob. I was in full panic mode at this point. He got the door broken down eventually because the frame to the door broke. I ran out and he caught me asking what the heck just happened. I explained everything to him. We went upstairs immediately, and I told him that I never wanted to step foot in that room ever again. We believe that the lady may have passed down there. I didn't get many details of her passing myself, so what? Ichno is what I've just been told from others. This same room has also given others the creeps with no context, given beforehand. I brought both of my older sisters down to see the basement, but we'd redone the floors and painted the walls at this point, and they both gravitated towards the room, and they even witnessed the door closing on its own too. Both have different levels of beliefs in the paranormal. My oldest sister is a hopeful skeptic. I believe she thinks it's super interesting, but actually believing is another thing in and of itself. And my other sister is more of a believer. We play a game called Murder in the Dark. Imagine Among Us without lights. We had about 6 friends over, so 8 of us all together to play, and 3 of us happened to end up in the bedroom downstairs. After a few games we discussed where we hid, why, and who we thought that we ran into. Just sort of post-game talk. And all of my friends mentioned that they honestly believed that somebody else was in the room with them when they entered that bedroom. Another thought that they felt a cat rub up against their ankles. But we had our cat upstairs at this point. My cat is actually very vocal, and for the first game he actually found me and gave up my hiding spot as well. But that room has the center of a lot of bizarre things, and sure, the house could be settling weird and explain the door. I guess the electrical could be bad in that room, and explain the light, but I haven't ever seen the door close on its own before or after that event ever again. And ever since my boyfriend started to renovate that room for an office, the light bulbs have lasted months now instead of a couple of days. But if you stay in that basement for long enough, trust me, you begin feeling stared at from one of the corners, inevitably. Here I really cannot explain that, and I don't know what to think of music. I would like to begin by saying that I do believe in spirits or something beyond our comprehension exists, but my knowledge about them and our present situation is extremely poor for possible interpretations. Our home is an ancestral colonial estate within South Africa, dating back to the 19th century. There is a family mausoleum on the outskirts of the property, and a somewhat large burial site for the household's workers, roughly 100 meters away from the house, and family members, friends, and some visitors have all had strange experiences. In the grounds throughout the majority of my life, I have experienced strange things in the house, scratching from within, the walls, doors slamming at night, the dogs barking at random and at nothing, seemingly footsteps, just general stuff that is scary, but is also easily discarded. With reason, I've always soothed myself back into calm by attributing it to be the house being old. However, the past 2 months have been nothing short of a nightmare. I feel like I'm living in an aerial horror movie here. So what leads me to sharing this is what was set in motion by an eerie anomaly, followed by an extremely unnerving discovery last night in the early hours of this morning around 1 A. I was kept awake by very loud scratching footsteps and thumping outside of my bedroom door. Initially, I had thought that this was the dog and just let it be a few minutes later, though I heard my door handle being turned. It was being turned repeatedly, though like over and over again, but the door wasn't being pushed open, nor was there any movement from the door itself. Thinking that we were being home invaded, I got my handgun and started screaming. But the door handle was still being turned. My brother and parents ran to my room. No one was outside of my door, nor was anyone found inside of the house. Neither was there any breach into the home or anything. And after searching, my parents told me that it was just a nightmare. And so in the end, I just equated it to that, but cut forward to this morning, and my brother got up to go to work. So I went back to my room before opening the door. I had this indescribable feeling in my gut, though, and my body just felt suddenly cold. I went in to find my sheets sprawled out on the sofa and floor far on the other side of the bedroom. My crucifix, which is mounted on my side of the bedroom door, was crooked with one of the nails popped out of the door and the other slightly pushed out of the wood. It was nailed in, though, and I mean it cannot physically be turned like that, and the nails just would have needed tools to be pulled out. So I have no idea how that happened. A portrait of my opera next to me bed was very unnaturally crooked too, which was odd. But I immediately felt, and I know this sounds strange and crazy, but that something very sinister is going on, and that something malevolent, no idea what, was suddenly watching me. I got my brother, and he was equally distressed about it. So we got our parents. My dad thought that someone was still in the house, but my brother and dad searched the house to no avail. And again, nothing was amiss with security systems, the doors, the windows, or anything. I went back into my room and saw what we all think is blood above one of the mirrors. The mirrors are those sort of sliding mirrors with closets built into the home, and the height of the blood is very high on it. It was like 3 streaks of blood going down, as if it was sort of wiped there or something. I stupidly touched it and smeared it. So the lines aren't as concise anymore, but that is proof that whatever this was, it is still wet, which means that it occurred very recently here. You can sort of see too that it hasn't dripped down from anything, and it looks like it had just been placed there by fingers. Maybe it's extremely difficult to reach without a chair, though, so I don't know why an intruder would leave that there or willingly do that. This was not here prior as well, and the blood is in a sort of strange position that has been smeared weirdly. When my dad went to take a look, I could see that he was visibly frightened, which I'd never really seen before. And he's a pretty stoic guy. He's a strong man as well, which has furthered my belief that this is something evil. My parents called the police, and they're on the drive up here at this point. They're still discussing it and being very secretive about it. However, they just cannot comprehend or figure out what happened and who or what did. They don't believe in ghosts, entities, or anything spiritual. But I'll definitely be pushing them into getting the house blessed by our priest immediately, since we were little. My brother and I have always felt like someone was in our rooms when we slept. We both feel like something is there. And there's a very sort of thick, weird feeling or energy, which I find hard to describe or attribute to anything. But it is somewhat similar to, I guess, dread, or maybe angst is the better word. It has intensified greatly in the last few months, with both of us experiencing more physical anomalies. We've both experienced being touched, scratched, usually on my back. But I had one which drew blood across my breast as well, and I've had my hair pulled a few times. Some family members have experienced it when visiting, and my aunt especially doesn't like staying with us, because she had similar experiences in her youth as well. My dad doesn't elaborate on it, and discards it as nonsense, as she is more of the spiritual type. Unlike my daddy, thought a lot of the physicality felt down to scratching itches in my sleep, or getting my hair caught on things. But the more my brother and I discussed it, we believe that something is amiss and is just very, very wrong. Just a note as well, No one has broken in, nor are there any ways to access the house besides 4 very thick wooden doors which are always dead-bolted at nighttime. I don't have any mental health issues either, and this is not dreamt or some product of a hallucination, as we have both experienced things that we've never really discussed with each other before, and suddenly we were just like, hey, that's happened to me as well, but we are desperately looking for help or advice and an explanation as to my family's current predicament. So if you've got anything to add, any advice, or really any comment, please do share it, because I'm pretty music frightened. My girlfriend and I. We're graduate students living together in a 6-unit apartment building with an outside stairwell. It was an older Victorian home that had been converted into apartments. The whole street was lined with similar buildings. It was off campus but conveniently located, within walking distance of bars, a coffee shop, and several restaurants. The neighborhood had laid-back bohemian sort of vibes. The tenants were a mixture of college, kids, young professionals, and families. The area was generally safe, but it wasn't too far from a rougher section of town. So it was a Thursday night, and being the night owl that I am, it was post 3:00 I had just finished a movie. I turned the TV off and went to the stairwell for a quick smoke before bed. We were in the middle of a snowstorm at this point, so the ground was covered in 6 in of fresh powder and it was freezing. I quickly smoked my cigarette and rushed back inside. My girlfriend was always complaining about me forgetting to lock the door, and as was my habit, I left the door unlocked. I jumped into bed though, and just as I was falling asleep I thought that I heard a noise. I brushed it off at first, but then I heard a creak, probably just the wind. I concluded moments later I heard the floorboard squeaking. Now I was listening intently. My girlfriend felt me shuffling and asked what was wrong. I told her that I thought that I heard something, and then we both heard what sounded like someone stumbling onto our couch. We shut up and I yelled, "Is someone there?" No answer. The floor creaked again. This time in unison we shouted, "Who's there?" Another noise. I quietly stood up and scanned the room for something that could be used as a weapon, but there was nothing growing up. My dad always kept a baseball bat under his bed, and I regretted not adopting this practice. We yelled again, but there was no response. Again. But this time, from the darkness we were greeted by a low-pitched, incomprehensible growl. I wondered if one of my buddies was playing a prank on me that seemed out of character for my friends, especially at this hour on a weekday night and during a snowstorm. What I really thought was that a crackhead had wandered in. My girlfriend yelled, "Who's out there?" More footsteps. The intruder was still in the family room, but he was getting closer to our bedroom. Now we heard the growl again, but this time it was followed by a gurgle, and it's Matt. We didn't know any Matts, at least, not any that would enter an apartment uninvited in the middle of the night. I looked at my girlfriend, and I had never seen someone so scared. If worst came to worst, I thought to myself, well, I know I can outrun her. I hoped it didn't come to that. "Matt who?" We shouted repeatedly. After a long pause, he finally said, "Matt, I'm friends with Mike and Kelly." Relief washed over us. Mike and Kelly were our neighbors. I turned on the lights and walked into the family room, and there he stood, a 6'2" slovenly-looking college kid. Matt was blacked out. Drunk or neighbors had hosted a pregame party at their apartment, apparently followed by a trip to the nearby bars. They had abandoned Matt, and despite the storm, he had found his way back to their apartments. Their door was locked, and his phone calls had gone unanswered. His evolutionary drive to survive had kicked in, and he had sought warmth in the first unlocked apartment that he could find. I told him that he scared us and that he had to go. He stepped outside, and I quickly locked the door behind him the next day. Though I learned that Matt had unfortunately frozen to death, he'd been discovered by another neighbor huddled next to her car under the lean-to garage.